In this section, we are going to cover the frequency of compounding, but before we do, I'd like to cover a topic called uneven cash flows. And uneven cash flows frequently occur when you have a business organization that has some uncertainty in what it will generate. For example, they may anticipate that growth will take place for a while and then it'll start to level off. They also may anticipate some reinvestment in the company, so you might have a period of negative cash flows for a while. Most businesses don't have traditional annuity type or constant cash flows. They have quite a bit of uncertainty in their cash flows. We can handle uneven cash flows the same way that we handle lump sums. They're really just a series of lump sum payments. And in this example, we want to calculate the present value, and in later sections we'll learn that this is what is called the net present value of a series of cash flows. That we have an initial investment, then we have some inflows. There's either a poor period or maybe some reinvestment or something like that where the cash flows once again go negative, and then positive in the future. So we can solve for the present value of these cash flows. We can also solve for the future value. But we cannot use the annuity equation because these cash flows are uneven. They're not equal. So we treat each one of these cash flows as individual and we discount to the present. So you can see cash flow 0 here, there is no discounting to the present because it is at time period 0. We take the first cash flow, discount it 1 period, the second cash flow discounted 2 periods, all the way up to the nth cash flow. If we want to know the future value, we would compound the cash flows to the future, and we can see that we're using just the lump sum equation here, where we now use the interest rate factor to compound rather than discount. Now numerically we can solve this problem by taking each one of these cash flows and discounting them to the present or compounding them to the future. So 450 is in the present, 300 divided by the interest rate factor, 250 divided by the interest rate factor. Now that all of these cash flows occur at the same time period, we'd simply add them up. So we get a present value of $517.47. Let's do that using your calculator. So we want to start by clearing time value of money and clearing anything that might be on the calculator, so second quit. We need to take one additional step. We need to clear our cash flow worksheet. So in order to clear the cash flow worksheet, we enter the cash flow worksheet and then we hit second clear work. And that's going to clear anything that might be in this cash flow worksheet. Now we can enter the values. So the first value that's asked for is cash flow at time period 0. So we have a $450 cash flow negative. We need to remember to hit enter to put that into the registry. Then we hit the down arrow key one time to get to cash flow at time period 1. $300 is that cash flow. Now when we hit the arrow key one more time, we see that it's not C02, but it's F01. This means frequency of the first cash flow. How many times does it reoccur? In this case, or this example, none of the cash flows reoccur. They're all different. But if you had a series of cash flows, say for 5 or 10 years, and then another series of cash flows, rather than entering each one of those, you could just change that frequency value. We'll hit the down arrow key one more time to get the second cash flow, 250. Now we'll hit it twice to get past that frequency button once again. We have that negative cash flow of 150. Twice again. Cash flow 4 is 200. Cash flow 5 is 500. and we're done. Now you can review those by simply just hitting the down arrow key and making sure each one of those cash flows are correct. Now we want to calculate the present value. So we will use the net present value function right next to the cash flow. When we click on that, the first thing it asks for is the interest rate, or the interest rate we will be discounting by. So we hit enter for the interest rate. Down arrow one time and compute. So you can see we calculate that problem, and it's called the net present value. The net means that it's netting out any initial costs or the initial investment. So we'll find in later sections that this $518 represents the value created by making this investment. That concludes this segment. In the next segment, we'll move on to semi-annual and other types of compounding.